they're going to try to ethnically cleanse Gaza. I mean, I don't use that term lightly, okay? But there are some serious questions here, Patrick. And let me tell you, my pattern recognition over the last 5 years has become pretty sharp.
These newly surfaced photos of Charlie Kirk from the day everything unfolded are seriously unsettling. There is something about them that feels unusual, and people are finding it harder to ignore. Viewers were already questioning the official version of events, but now that these images are getting more attention, it is becoming much tougher to dismiss the concerns like nothing happened. We are talking about dozens of raw, unfiltered photos taken at Utah Valley University before the situation intensified, during the tense moments, and right after everything changed. Now that people are slowing down and studying each shot more carefully, small details that once went unnoticed are suddenly standing out in a big way. The angles, the positioning, the reactions, and the overall atmosphere are all raising fresh questions for many viewers. But before getting into what people believe they are noticing in those photos, it makes sense to pause for a moment and break this down carefully. Charlie, Kirk did not simply appear at
idea that foreign elements may have been involved or may just have knowledge of Charlie Kirk's assassination prior to the event. When did that first arise to your awareness?
And they were on the ground on September 10th at Utah Valley University when Charlie was shot. Now, the NSA knows this. Kash Patel knows this. People in the current administration know this, and they are desperate for some reason to stop that information from being released to the public. Why?
That event on September 10th like it was just another routine stop on the schedule. By that stage, people had already started noticing that he seemed to be moving differently behind the scenes, and that shift was getting harder to miss. His tone was changing, his messaging was changing, and even some of the people and ideas he seemed willing to stand beside were starting to look different. He had been more openly pushing back on talk of a possible conflict with Iran, stepping into major political conversations and telling people to slow down, think carefully, and not rush into something far bigger than expected. And let's be honest, that alone seemed to place him in a very uncomfortable spot with certain groups. At the same time, he was giving attention to voices that many of his usual supporters did not want connected to him at all.
My pattern recognition over the last 5 years has become pretty sharp. COVID, Maui fires, Epstein. When I see a story and it doesn't click,
we are talking about people raising questions about foreign policy, intelligence links, and issues tied to the Epstein story, subjects that usually stay far away from the mainstream spotlight and well outside the safe public conversation. Yeah, on the surface it may have looked like open debate or simple free speech, but behind the scenes, not everyone seemed to view it that way. The tension had clearly been building well before that day arrived. From the outside, things may have still looked polished, but in private, the situation appeared far less stable. People connected to Turning Point USA, whether through funding, support, or influence, did not seem fully aligned. And that growing divide was becoming harder to hide. There were reports of frustrated donors, private messages going back and forth, increasing pressure, and closed-door conversations where Charlie Kirk was allegedly being urged to correct the direction
where they anticipated tens of thousands of people to take to the streets. That's all gone, Patrick. Netanyahu now has an emergency government and a mandate to lead. I'm not willing to go so far that saying that Netanyahu knew or there was intelligence here, but I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand-down order?
Tighten up the messaging and stop giving room to certain narratives. This did not sound like casual criticism or minor disagreement. It sounded like serious internal pressure from people who wanted more control over how things were being handled. And according to several accounts, he did not simply back down. Then once the timeline moves into early August, that is when the sequence of events starts to line up in a way that many observers find hard to ignore. There was also that reported Hampton meeting where Charlie Kirk was allegedly confronted again and pushed even harder, almost like certain people were trying to bring him back in line.
And Charlie Kirk was, according to one source, hammered by Ackman and others for allowing Israel critics, very prominent conservative voices like Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson.
At the same time, he was speaking more openly in public about being criticized, questioned, and labeled simply for stepping even slightly outside the expected message. That is not minor tension. That is the
will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
Back in the spring and summer of 2025, this was once again a topic of conversation, and Charlie was very clear that he didn't agree with America engaging in war with Iran.
Kind of pressure that can build fast and create serious friction behind the scenes. Around that same period, people say quiet internal changes also seem to be happening around him. Some of it looked administrative at first, subtle enough that most people would not pay close attention. But looking back now, many observers believe those small shifts may have pointed to something bigger developing under the surface. There was even a point where he seemed to recognize that the direction of things was changing, almost like he understood where it could all lead next. At the time, most people saw these as separate moments, but now many are revisiting the timeline and connecting the pieces one by one. And once the timeline reaches September 10th,
Second, what do you mean? What does with us mean exactly, right? I'm an American, okay? Hostile reaction. Is that now Meghan and Charlie are enemies?
Right.
Boy, I'll tell you, like, you're not gonna, I wouldn't say lose, but you will weaken and just basically deflate.
The more you try to tell me I can't criticize Israel, the more likely I am to do it, to focus on exactly what you're doing.
everything seems to accelerate fast. Charlie Kirk arrives at Utah Valley University. The event looks full. The mood appears normal, and at first glance, nothing seems obviously out of place. But then the situation shifts very quickly, and for a long time, many people felt like the public only saw a carefully limited version of what happened. Certain angles, certain moments, and certain details seemed to get most of the attention, while other parts of the scene stayed out of view. That is why these newly surfaced photos are getting so much attention now, because they
Charlie, what are you doing? Like, why are you... What am I doing? My moral character is now being put into question, Meghan. Not my decisions. Not like, hey, are you doing this? Is it smart or is it dumb? But no, I am a bad person if I do this.
appear to show perspectives that were not widely seen before. Instead of only seeing the stage or the later moments, people can now study those in-between seconds that usually get overlooked. You can see more of the crowd, who was standing where, who seemed focused on what, and which reactions stood out once people started reviewing everything more closely. Online, viewers are already going through the images frame by frame.
I don't mean that there were 12 VPNs that were switched and routed through Israel on that day. I mean that there were 12 personal cell phone accounts that were opened in Israel, okay? Like you go into Verizon in Tennessee or in Connecticut and you open your phone. I am saying that they opened their phones in Israel, those accounts in Israel.
Pointing out repeated clothing patterns, especially maroon-toned outfits that appear in different areas of the scene. And this is where the discussion starts getting even more intense, because some of those individuals do not immediately appear connected to the event in any obvious way. Then one person asked, "Who is this man?" While pointing at someone whose appearance immediately stood out, people started focusing on details like the haircut, the posture, the watch, and the overall way he was carrying himself, with some viewers saying he gave off a military or law enforcement type of vibe. Then another person jumped in and asked, "Why are these guys just standing there?"
Ladies and gentlemen, there were, for whatever reason, 12 Israeli cell phones on the ground at Utah Valley University the day that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. This has completely spooked the people that are very high up in government.
That alone was enough to get people talking, because some felt like their presence raised more questions than answers. And it did not stop there. Once people looked at the balcony angle footage and the discussions around it, even more attention went to how quickly certain individuals seemed to be in place after the incident. For many viewers, the timing is the part that feels hardest to ignore, because they believe it does not line up the way they expected it would.
Friends of Charlie Kirk, right? Standing on that stage, giving him a speech, hiding this. Now, what would be the reason that they wanted to keep that information under wraps? And why does it have people at the very top spooked? If there's nothing to hide, then there's nothing to hide.
Nothing here has been officially confirmed, but the discussion around it has grown strong enough that more people are seriously questioning how certain movements happened so fast, and whether everyone there was truly caught off guard the way many were led to believe.
They were on the ground on September 10th at Utah Valley University when Charlie was shot. Now, the NSA knows this. Kash Patel knows this. People in the current administration know this, and they are desperate for some reason to stop that information from being released to the public. Why?
The photos alone have already sparked a lot of debate, but for many viewers, the digital side of that day is what feels even more unsettling. There have been claims circulating online that several foreign-linked mobile devices were active near that exact location during the event.
I have an amazing girlfriend. She's spectacular.
Is she in politics?
Not really, no.
What can you tell us about her?
She's
What would you be
beautiful.
willing?
She's reverent.
She's a reverend? I didn't know this about her.
She's reverent.
Oh. I was like, wait, this is new. I don't know if we'll want to keep that or not.
Oh, you better keep it.
What's an example? What do you mean?
She's prayerful. She believes in God. She's a great person. She believes in other people. She always thinks of other people before herself. She's very fun. And honestly, I'm so blessed to be able to have her in my life.
That information has not been publicly verified, and it is important to keep that clear. But the claim itself has added even more pressure to an already intense conversation. And people are not talking about this like it was just random background signal noise either. The way it is being discussed, some believe the activity may have involved accounts connected to locations outside the United States, showing up on site during the event itself. Even without public confirmation, that idea has made many observers more uneasy.
And they kicked us out of reviewing all of that. This went through a couple different iterations where we asked for some more access to look into things that were well within our purview, questions that I think are still unanswered, and we were pretty much, shut out of that.
And I believe those same people wanted control over TPUSA so that they can continue to use it to launder Hasbara. They probably didn't anticipate that we would be asking all of these questions though. And I think the reason that so many people at TPUSA have been complicit in the cover-up is because they were stealing money from TPUSA.
Especially because they believe it adds another strange layer to a timeline that already feels full of unanswered questions. Then came another detail that made people ask even more questions. There were claims that certain efforts to look deeper into this angle were reportedly pulled back, and that immediately led to one big reaction from viewers. If there was nothing there, then why stop people from looking into it more closely? That question keeps coming up again and again because the more layers people examine, the less settled the full story seems to feel. Every new detail appears to open another gap that people think still has not been clearly explained. And according to the discussions happening online, these photos are only the start of what many are now paying attention to. There are also broader claims being talked about involving Joe Kent, a former director tied to national security conversations, and what some people believe may be a deeper issue in how this case was handled, including during the memorial period. Then there was also a remark from Tucker Carlson, someone widely known to have been close to Charlie, and that moment caught a lot of people off guard. For many viewers, it did not sit right, and it quickly became one more detail added to a growing list of moments. People keep revisiting. Once you start noticing things like that, it naturally makes people wonder what else may already be sitting out in plain sight, waiting for someone to connect the dots. And according to the conversations happening online, the more pieces people line up, the harder the overall timeline becomes for them to make sense of. If you made it this far, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, drop your thoughts in the comments, and share this with someone else following the story. I will see you in the next one.